Mark Carney's Canada budget is one major story. This one might actually matter more for global power dynamics. Today, we're looking at a breaking development. Sweden and Ukraine have signed a letter of intent for Ukraine to acquire up to 150 Gripen fighter jets. And Canada is very much in the mix, not just as another buyer, but potentially as a manufacturing site. We're going to unpack what this means for Ukraine's war effort and air power future, Sweden's defense industrial plan, Canada's chance to reclaim aerospace sovereignty, and why this matters for North American strategy. So welcome to North America. I'm your host, Pierre Shields. Grab a coffee, we're diving deep. Before we do, though, somebody in one of the comments in another video I did about the Gripen said we should call it the FU-47, which I thought was pretty funny, but being a Canadian airplane should be the CFU-47. All right, let's take a look. What's happening? On October 22nd, 2025, Sweden and Ukraine signed a formal letter of intent for Ukraine to acquire between 100 and 150 Gripen E fighters. Sweden's prime minister and Ukraine's president appeared together in Linköping, Sweden, the heart of the platform's production. Here are some key facts following the meeting. So the deal is a letter of intent, not yet a full contract. First deliveries are projected within 3 years for at least the initial jets. The number, between 100 and 150, would be the largest export order in the Gripen's history. The deal includes not just aircraft, but training, maintenance, and industrial cooperation. Why does this matter for Ukraine? Well, the Gripen E is designed for operations in contested airspace with modern radar and mission systems. It can operate from rough airfields and shorter runways. It's tailor-made for wartime Ukraine's needs. It gives Ukraine a path to build a modern fighter fleet, not just a patchwork of legacy Soviet jets. What's still unknown? Financing. Will Ukraine or Sweden's partners fund it, and how? The production timeline and exact breakdown. How many will be built, when, and where? How will they integrate with Ukraine's other platforms, the F-16s and so on? So this is big, but still in motion. Sweden and Saab's production challenge. For the Swedish defense industrial giant Saab, this deal is more than sales, it's a capacity explosion. Saab's CEO recently stated that if the 100 to 150 order finalizes, production volume must roughly double. Also, Saab is considering final assembly or part production in Ukraine, and possibly also in Canada, besides existing Swedish-Brazil sites. This matters because launching such a large deal creates industrial leverage, jobs, exports, and supply chains. It also shifts the balance. The defense industrial base becomes part of the national strategy, not just procurement. For Saab, cracking a major order like this revives the Gripen platform's export momentum after years of limited export success. So the structure is Sweden and Saab offering Ukraine long-term industrial partnerships plus jets. Canada's role. Here's where things get interesting for us in Canada. While this Ukraine deal is Sweden-Ukraine, Canada is closely watching and potentially participating. Here's some key Canadian angles. Saab's Canadian website states that if Gripens are selected for Canada, the jets, quote, will be built, maintained, and upgraded in Canada together with our Canadian partners, end quote. Canada is reviewing its existing commitment to purchase 88 F-35 Lightning II jets and is re-examining whether a single-engine alternative, like the Gripen, is viable. Saab CEO confirmed talks continue with Canada on the Gripen E or F. Articles mention that Saab has pledged to assemble Gripens in Canada in partnership with Canadian firms like CAE, IMP Aerospace, Bombardier, and so on. So while Canada hasn't signed a Gripen deal yet, the industrial offset and participation promise is real. What would built in Canada mean? Well, Canadian final assembly or major systems integration of Gripen aircraft or parts. Canadian companies capturing supply chain contracts, mission systems, avionics, and maintenance. Shift in Canadian defense aerospace strategy. So from primarily buying foreign jets and engines to hosting, production, and exporting. Why this matters to Canada? Well, there's the job creation in aerospace. High-tech manufacturing is a key component. For strategic independence, we would have less reliance on US platforms only. It would strengthen the national defense industrial base aligning with Canada's sovereignty goals. What are the challenges and questions? Canada's required infrastructure must scale: hangars, pilots, training, logistics, and so on. Interoperability with NORAD, US systems, would be complex. What about cost? Well, Canada has invested heavily in the F-35 ecosystem already. Shifting may add overhead. We don't know whether the Ukraine production push via Gripen elevates Canada's chances or remains separate. Kind of hoping it helps. Geopolitics and strategic implications. This isn't just about jets. This is about power, alliances, and industrial sovereignty. For Ukraine, they would gain up to 150 modern fighter jets and send a signal. Kyiv isn't just defending, it's planning its future air force. For Sweden, Europe, A major export like this shifts European defense industry influence. It gives Sweden greater leverage in NATO EU defense dynamics. For Canada and North America, if Canada participates in manufacturing, the continent hosts diversified supply chains, not just US. It offers Canada an alternative defense strategic path, not just aligning with US systems, but building complementary capability. It reinforces Canada's potential role as industrial partner, not just consumer. Also, if Canada builds Gripens for Ukraine or participates in that chain, it ties Canadian industry to wartime supply chains, raising both opportunities and risks. What to watch and timelines. Here are the key questions and timelines to track. The contract finalization. Will Sweden and Ukraine convert the letter of intent into a full contract? When and what will it cover? The delivery schedule. When do the first Gripens go to Ukraine? Some sources say within 3 years. The production locations. Will some jets be assembled in Ukraine or Canada? Saab is exploring both. Canada's procurement decision. Will Canada pick Gripen over or alongside the F-35? When? With what industrial offsets? The industrial investment. Will Canadian companies secure major contracts for systems, parts, and integration? The strategic interoperability. How will Gripens integrate with NATO, US, Canada command and control? The regional response. How will Russia react? How will US allies view Canada building a non-US mainline fighter? We will revisit this topic as each of these milestones is met. Conclusion. Let me be clear, this Ukraine Gripen story is huge. If it plays out as sketched, it changes trajectories. For the Ukraine Air Force, for Sweden's defense industry, for Canada's aerospace ambitions, and for North American strategic posture. But it's not sealed yet. Big deal? Yes. Contract signed? Not fully. Canada's role? Promised, but not locked. If Canada can turn this into build here, assemble here, export here, it might mark a significant step towards the country becoming a strategic industrial player, not just a buyer. Otherwise, it remains yet another ambitious defense deal possibility that never fully delivers. Thanks for watching this deep dive. If you found this useful, hit like, subscribe, and share, and drop a comment below. Which aspect of the Gripen story interests you most? Ukraine, Sweden's industry, or Canada's manufacturing opportunity? And as always, I'm Pierre Shields for North Omega. Stay strategic, stay sovereign, and go play outside.